I made a sample file which I posted to Blackboard in week 7 course content, and I created a little sculpture in Revit, and here's the STL file for it that we'll be playing with today. So we can download it here. My downloads folder. Prusa slicer. Yeah, it doesn't really have scale yet. File, import, imperial units. And that was in downloads, sculpture. Monday, we just use basic beginner default settings, which works fine for an upside down bench. It's probably not going to work with this. That's an interesting question. Uh, that's an interesting question. We're not going to do that, but if I select it, I can just like, oh man, oh gosh, a for the day. Well, let's say that we didn't want to do that for some reason. Very good. Yes, I mean that was sliced with a flat plane, so it should just lie on itself. That's funny. Okay, but let's do it. And that would be fast and nice and easy. And actually, this will be illustrative. That's funny. Okay, so I'm just sort of taking my starting values here, just sort of the default ones that are linked in. And to repeat, the 50.15 millimeter is the height of the of each layer. The quality basically means I'm taking it slow, so I'll get all the corners right and all the curves right. If we kick into this 0.05, that's just super thin. It would take hours to print this, but it'd be very, very smooth as it could get. Down here it would be chunky. You'd really see the passes. But we'll just leave it here. Prusa PLA, the printer. And what I want to talk about today is supports. And remember, if we're going to print this guy this way, I would have had to support underneath here to be able to put those tops on. So let's just say, instead of saying no supports, let's just say put supports everywhere they might need it. And then we'll slice. And what we see here is that the bottom needs to be supported. And then if you remember on the this test print, after you reach a certain degree of levelness coming across a curve, it starts to break up and it just can't attach. So you need to have supports under there that come up first, and then Prusa can just kind of build on top of them, and they're not attached while you pull them out afterwards. They touch, but they don't fuse. They're just like, instead of being mushed together, they're just like sitting there. And that's so we could pass that around if you like. The drawback of this is it would that's a lot more plastic than we really need. Let's say none. Every time you make a change, you're gonna have to reslice. Let's say none and slice, and it's gonna take 2.5 hours. Because it is like this tall, it's not. Let's turn the supports everywhere and reslice. And now it's through, another half an hour or something rather. And it's just all this little stuff going back and forth. There are a couple of different kinds of supports that I want to get into, but this is sort of what we're addressing right now. So we can have a couple of different versions of support. No supports, supports on the build plate only. Should be down there, just none sitting on here. And a reason you might not want any here is they do leave like a faint trace. I mean, you would see that there had been something there, even though it had been pulled off. It wouldn't be perfectly smooth. And if we wanted this to be, real visible. The other options are for support enforcers, and we'll deal that at the very end, or everywhere. And we can see that this is actually kind of bigger than it really needs to be, possibly. So I like a way to sort of trim that down, which we can't do in beginner mode. We have to kick up to like our normal mode. So to make basically any changes more advanced than what's available here, we go over to print settings, where we have, we can control variables that relate to the layers and the outsides, to the infill, to the skirt and the brim that go down on the right on the bed to hold it in place, and then for the support material, which we've been messing with already. And here under layers and perimeters, we can pretty much ignore all this. There's not really a reason to change those. But with where the seam position happens, right now they're aligned just up like that, or it can be random, just one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here, which works well. See, this has got that very visible seam right here, which is a bummer, you know, I have to say. And if it's just an occasional little blip here and there, it just sort of blends in a lot better. And it also says rear, like if there's a front and a back, you can force them back to the back of it if you know which is the front and which is the back, and how it's thinking about them. And what's the other one? Nearest. I don't know. If we want to know any of these, we can just click on the word, and it'll take you to the Prusa website, and it'll tell you everything you want to know about any of these things. Yeah, you know. So, you know, useful stuff. We also, at each printer, there's a small paperback, which if you've got 20 minutes before class starts or something, just start working through that. It's one that came with the printer, just to show you how to do cool stuff, you know. So seam position. There's this thing called fuzzy skin, but it's the vertical surfaces. As the nozzle is going along, it can be sort of doing this kind of a thing and break up the texture of your sidewalls a little bit. So probably not much to do here. Oh, let's go to, normal mode. We got a lot more things here. Layers and perimeters won't change a lot. You see, there's a lot of options here. That sort of the deeper you go here, the more options you get. And I just try to do as few as possible, just so you know. So I'm going back to normal mode. Infill, and this is where I wanted to. I just watch what I'm doing here, because we'll come back and do it. If you saw what we were doing before, the infill was this sort of three-dimensional curved stuff. We can just do a rectilinear, which will just be a cross-hatched thing coming up. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. Every time we make any changes here, we go back to the plater, which I don't know if that's like a checked word, but it's like when you're plating a meal, you know, you sort of present it like this. So slice it now. And slide down. And you can see that there's this rectangular grid inside here for the infill, and it used to be some sort of curvy stuff. Go back to print settings. Okay, then we have two other fill patterns, which are the very top of something and the very bottom of something. And these are actually kind of interesting. This is a new thing. If you would like to have those lines being concentric, that top final layer, we can say concentric, and go back and slice it. I don't really have any top layers for this thing. Well, I'll do it for the bottom layers. Bottom fill pattern, concentric. So you can see, instead of just going back and forth, it'll do that in little concentric circles. Or spirals or hexagons or anything you want, which on the bottom doesn't make much sense. But if you want your the top surface to have a little character, you could do one of those. fill pattern. This is a fun one. Some, you have something along those lines. Slicer is a, let's just say open source. People all over the world are working on it, making suggestions, which then they submit to Prusa, who says, yeah, we'll make this part of our standard feature. This is probably one of them. Ironing is fun. It works better on flat surfaces, but that's where after the top layer has gone on, the nozzle will come back at the same level, extruding just a tiny amount of plastic, and will just smooth it. So a much slicker top flat surface than before. Something to try. Ironing type, topmost surface only, all solid surfaces. It takes longer. So it's a whole nother pass. I don't mess with these down here. The skirt and the brim. But if in plan we have our object, the skirt just gets drawn out here. And that's really just to make sure that the nozzle is feeding correctly. It gives a couple of inches to get its act together. And then a brim is an area, a filled area around the object, just a layer or two thick that helps hold it in place if it just sort of got doesn't have much contact, or if it's something that has like sharp corners, it can help hold that down because those tend to curl up as they cool. So this will help hold everything down flat to the bed and cool flat instead of cooling too fast and curling up. And then the most fun comes here in the support material. And I basically don't deal with any of these at all. Support material is if we have checked to put supports everywhere. And go back here, we have a couple of choices about what the geometry of that support material is going to be. What we saw to start with was just the grid, which is just a rectangular grid coming up until it supports. The one called snug is very similar, but it doesn't overhang out to the sides. It's the same, tucked right up underneath what it's supporting instead of coming a little bit farther out to the side. But the fun one is the organic, which does this to be able to support up here without having anything rest on the object itself. And this is a new cool thing. It took Prusa a while to adopt it. Other slicing programs did it first, and I think they have a pretty good implementation of it. I've made trees with this, where I just place little tiny spheres in space, and then it creates the trees that will come up and hold it. Looks like trees. Anyway, kind of fun in a model, actually, if you're doing site models or something. What these are, to keep them from being taking too much time, these are carefully engineered circles. So there's no fill inside them. This is getting filled because this is the actual object that we're going to have to carry around and do stuff with. But these are just empty, and come up and support that guy. So let's do one of these. I think it's big, so let's make it smaller. Let's go back to here. To sort of affect the object itself, we go back to the 3D editor part. This is the layer, seeing the layers. This is saying the 3D object, and select it. And let's say make it half as big, 50%. Sorry, 50. Okay. And then just because it's cool, I'm going to slice it again, so still with the organic supports. That'll take an hour. Anybody want to put this on an SD card and print it? Well, I'll do it then. So now that I'm here, I'm going to go to export G code, and that's going to go to, on this, it's this Prusa 1, we're calling it sculpture. So the name of the file, the resolution, the quality, the material, the printer, and how long it's going to take. Save. Exporting finished, open folder. So here it is, ready to go. So I'll get into, I always like to explicitly eject these guys, these drives. Right click, eject. If you don't get a message, it's fine. Yeah, it's disappeared. Sometimes it'll say, haven't quite finished saving the file yet, or whatever it happens to be. So you come back and do it again. Who remembers what to do back here? Who hasn't done it yet? The switch is at the back next to where the power cord comes in. And this is the one that we put the glue stick down on. It's still there. I think we'll just leave it. You don't have to clean it off every time. So I think you could just press the black button, print from SD card, and then just scroll down till you find our sculpture. And that's it. I really like that. That's all there is to do at this end. You know, we have to do all our thinking over there. And we used to have, as you can sort of see, we used to have these extra computers set up as the place to do the work. But then people didn't have it at home. Here, you got it on your computer at home. Just work it all out and then just come in here with the card. So it's warming up. Who else has something I want to print? Summer. Oh, the card itself. You can. Each of the printers has one in it. Okay, so this is like a lot of support. Okay, can we turn this on its side or anything? You know, I don't think so. Let's try it with the snug. Well, actually, it's saying 52 minutes. Okay, let's try to minimize that given this. So this is not very big. Let's go back to the print settings and change the support material to snug, and then back and redo it. Okay, so 48 minutes. So let's go back to the organic and see what we get. And sometimes organic can be a lot more. So don't get your hopes up. An hour 5. So there, it's your call. You know, we go till 3 o'clock. So whatever you want. You know, and you can save this right to you can save this right to this guy and just skip a step. Okay, it's cooking away here. So is that working out? Can't save to drive D. These do have a little text slot on them. These have a little tiny slide on them that lock them or unlock them. And this one is saying the lock is in that direction. So I'm going to push it back. And then let's see all sorts of excitements here. I think that was the problem. So export G code back to crucibles, save. Yeah, that was that. Adirondack chair. We can do a filament change. Would you like red?
We can do red if that's easier. That
when we're adding filament, this is going to get fed down between two gears that push it down to print, and then when it's moving it, they roll backwards a little bit to pull it up so it won't string and then push it down again. And if you just cut the filament off like this, it has a hard time going down between the gears. So you cut it off at a steep angle. So this curious blend of extraordinary engineering, and then you got to cut the plastic, at 45 degrees. We just press it and go down to unload filament, and we say we're using PLA, and that way it's going to heat this up warm enough so it'll come back out again. Right now it's cooled off and solidified inside there, and it'll beep or something. It takes a couple minutes to warm up. Okay, it says press the knob to unload filament, and just pull it out. And now we go to load filament. Stick that in there. Is that the correct color? We say no, not yet. And then it starts feeding it all through. And you wait till red comes out and then say yes. And then SD card and go. If you see that it's just pulling and sliding around, we just stop it.
Okay.
Start the whole thing over again. Okay, got a little bit more to cover. If we get back onto page 3, let me turn off supports just to make this clear. If we go to print settings, we have an option for something called a raft. Let's imagine I was trying to print a sphere, which really has just about zero contact. You know, I don't want it flat on the bottom. I want it spherical on the bottom. But if I just print it, it will be sort of flattened off. What a raft does is it builds a plastic base of a given thickness and starts building your object on top of that. And that's helpful if you have, let's say that you have a sculpture that's flat on the bottom but leans off at an angle like that. And if it were, and you don't want to print supports on it because they would be messing it up. So you can print a raft, which prints a good solid base that holds on, that this would be able to grip, and then it could go off in its own direction. Well, we'll just look at what it would look like. So a raft would look like this. This green, dark green base, you know, it's however big the thing is at the bottom, plus, I don't know, 1/4 inch on each side, something like that. So here I have the skirt and the brim, and then the raft, and then the object itself. And sometimes you need them. I hardly ever use rafts, to tell you the truth. If this object didn't have its own circular base piece, I might have it sitting on a raft instead of right down flat on the plate. Okay, and the last thing is something that's we actually do out in the out here. Let's say that I would like it. I know I need it to be supported up here at the top, but it's okay down here at the bottom without supports. This is a way to say support only what I'm showing you. So once you've picked the object over here, we got more things here than we've really dealt with yet. I can paint on the areas that I want supported. So right here, I can select that, rotate around, and paint there in blue as the areas I want to be sort of supported from the bottom. So it's not going to do it down here, although normally, you know, it would. So I'm going to go back to here and say supports, and that's called a support enforcer right there. For support enforcers only. I'll go slice it. So it's not going to support the bottom. It's just going to support up where I told it to. So you can start to sort of fine tune those to get the results you want without making the time like super crazy. So that's an even hour to do that. If I said everywhere, well, another 5 minutes for that stuff, but still. Anyway, I'm not sure that we're actually doing either of these two back here big enough to see what's going on. And it's going to be actually hard to cut the stuff off, which with the little clippers are good for it. I use my Swiss Army knife. I don't like using X-Acto knives. I end up puncturing myself. I've got a bunch of little files and things at home. But generally the clippers will get you most of the way. Let's see how they're doing. Okay, so it's finished the bottom and it's just working its way up the top now. Who else has something like to print? Who else has something? We got a free printer. And what is it? Just a little munchkin? Go for it.